The Pacific launch and update 5.0 with all of its goodness, the final and by far best free weekend for Battlefield 5, Chapter 5 progression, more RTX contests, Battlefield 5 on Steam, and no new Battlefield coming in 2020. This is your week on the Battlefield. Welcome to this episode of This Week on the Battlefield, the show where we cover news, updates, the community, and so much more, all around the Battlefield franchise. As per usual, there's much to cover, so let's jump straight into it. This week was a big week for Battlefield 5, not only in terms of the content and additions made, as well as the updates and changes, but also in terms of the wider news cycle and what to expect from the game in the coming years. To start off with, of course, the launch of the Pacific. Now, I don't really need to go into finer details as to what the Pacific update exactly entails. Most, if not all of you at this point, will have had a go at storming the beaches on Pacific Storm or fighting up into the mountains on Iwo Jima. For those who haven't, however, but would like to, it's worth pointing out that the last of the free weekend Battlefield 5 trials is happening this weekend, with all of the multiplayer content, including the Pacific and Firestorm, as well as the war stories and co-op, being made available to try out. If you choose to go ahead and buy Battlefield 5 at this point in time, you also won't have to spend ages catching up to those of us who have already been playing for the past year, as the Year 2 edition of Battlefield just launched, featuring essentially all of the chapter rewards for chapters 1 through 4, alongside of course the base game content. Also this week, of course, the big 5.0 update, most notably bringing us a weapon inspect feature, weapon and gadget balance adjustments, including for the Breda PG, the Swarmy, and many other weapons out there, improvements to performance, especially on Operation Underground, changes to sliding, stationary MGs and AAs, faster fortification building, and most importantly, greatly improved audio, with footsteps being completely reworked and now much more reliable in terms of pinpointing your enemies. Not to be forgotten are of course the lack of Minecraft trees in the game now, and a whole host of other bugs that should be issues of the past. In terms of our weekly events and playlists then, we have the start of Chapter 5, and thus a whole chapter of progression to go through over the coming weeks and months. Plentiful Pacific themed weapon skins, some quite awesome soldier cosmetics, and most importantly, the jungle carbine, which looks to be an extremely strong addition to the Medic's bolt action carbines. Also then there are 2 new sidearms to be unlocked, the Type 94 and Model 27. All in all, plenty to do in terms of new content for Chapter 5. This week's actual weekly challenge is Attack, 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 featuring mostly infantry-focused tasks, with the reward being the crewman skin set for the Americans, something you most likely will need unless you have plenty of points to spend, given that the number of actual cosmetics available to the new US and Japanese factions, as to begin with, is relatively low. In addition to the Breakthrough playlist, Island Advance, we received this Thursday, which of course features 2 rounds of Breakthrough as Attacker and Defender respectively on the 2 new Pacific maps. We also got a Conquest focused playlist, Heat of the Battle, just yesterday, of course running exclusively once more on Iwo Jima and Pacific Storm. The Armory, not always of relevance but interesting this week, got of course a pretty large update as well, with all of the non-recycled content, of course regrettably, being of premium nature. For those with the cash to spend, the Warhorse collection features 1 melee weapon, 1 headgear, 2 skin sets, and a tank skin, whereas the Battlefield 5 booster pack features 6 tier catch-ups, which allow you to essentially jump ahead 6 levels on your chapter progression and of course receive those relevant rewards, 3 special assignments, and the commando outfit for the US. For those with significantly more money burning a hole in their pockets, there is the Battlefield 5 Premium Booster Pack featuring the previously mentioned tier catch-ups, special assignments, in addition to 2,000 points, a 20% chapter XP boost, 4 weapon skins, and 2 soldier outfits. Sadly, this week really didn't have that much in terms of the armory content for those of us who are not willing to drop relatively large sums of additional money on Battlefield 5. A small silver lining here being that the content presented is not only pretty good, but also at a little bit of a fairer value than some of the usual additions to the armory when they're just separate at either character skins or of course weapon cosmetics. As it fits here quite nicely, it's worth pointing out that if you missed unlocking the Trench Carbine, that is now available to purchase in your company for 1,700 company coins, and, at least in my personal opinion, is definitely worth it. In terms of the Trello board update this week, DICE has been busy adding some of the bugs that have cropped up with the launch of War in the Pacific and Update 5.0. To be fair, this is one of the best updates we've gotten in terms of stability so far, and thus the list is relatively short. Nevertheless, to help with some of those issues, DICE did deploy a hotfix this week for Xbox to address one of the major issues that has been in the game previously already as well, where hitting the Xbox button during the game actually makes it crash or log out, in other words, ending your Battlefield experience. Further to that, the most notable issues currently being tracked over on the Trello board are problems with the sliding activation, a too fast end of round transition, and issues with players not being able to deploy after bleeding out. If you find any additional bugs and they aren't listed on the Trello board, make sure to actually get in touch with one of the developers, as they're always keen to find new issues that are plaguing the game. In terms of what to expect next week, the weekly challenge, Hold the Course, will of course be active, with the reward being the Pacific Tiger skin for the Zero. Beyond that, we don't actually know what's coming up next, but given that numerous weapons and of course gadgets are still expected to launch during Chapter 5, it's not beyond reason to expect sooner or later one of those gadgets or weapons to come up in one of those weekly mission rotations. We also will see the first of 3 upcoming NVIDIA RTX Contests start next week, with this one focusing on screenshots and the upcoming 2 on gameplay and cinematics. If you're interested in winning a NVIDIA RTX card, usually a 2080 Ti, then pay attention to these, as this may be your best opportunity. DICE has also teased us with a rare insight into their telemetry data from the first days of the Pacific. For those more interested in the detailed workings of developing and balancing a Battlefield experience, this should be an interesting one, and supposedly we will be getting more details on this next week. In our ever popular and ever evolving, always relevant, soon TM category of news, we have first and foremost a pretty big one. EA Games will slowly be making a return to Steam over the coming months, with the first of them being the upcoming Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order on November 15th. Games such as Apex Legends, FIFA 20 and Battlefield 5 will also be coming next year, which means if you're a big fan of the Steam platform over on PC, yes, the days of being restricted exclusively to Origin, which has not exactly the best of reputations, will sooner or later be coming to an end. In addition, according to Jeff Braddock, community manager for Battlefield 5, those of us who are massive fans of the M1A1 Thompson, not to be confused with the already in the game present M1928A1, we may actually get something to be happy about relatively soon, as the devs have heard our feedback on the community's wish for that weapon, and we may or may not, in usual DICE fashion, be getting it on the road ahead. In community news, this section being relatively important this week, we have the Pacific to cover, of course, which all in all has probably been the best received piece of content to date, with Update 5.0 going alongside it, likely being one of the smoothest updates for Battlefield so far as well. Things are looking up, and DICE looks like they have the Pacific as turnaround opportunity for Battlefield 5 in their crosshairs, taken quite seriously, and with the launch of a new edition. I definitely think DICE is hoping that this coming year will breathe a fresh sense of air into this game, and hopefully its success. That aside, and in the most important piece of news, in my personal opinion, all week, DICE and EA will not be putting out a new Battlefield game in 2020. Instead, we will have to wait for 2021, meaning that Battlefield 5 indeed will be getting a 3-year life cycle, with plenty of time to add some more iconic theaters of war, such as the Normandy landings and the Eastern Front, and maybe even more unknown battles, such as the Second Sino-Japanese War or the conflict between Finland and the Soviet Union. If you want a bit of speculation on the topic, I did put out a video on what could be coming after Chapter 5 a little while ago, and I'll have it linked down below in the description and up above in the info card as per usual. It's also worth noting at this point that we do know and have had confirmed from developers that indeed, after Chapter 5, there is more content coming to Battlefield 5, and thanks to some data miners, we not only know that there is a Chapter 6 already in the works, but early indications suggest that it once more will include the Americans, however, most likely not in a Pacific setting. Though at this point, it is worth stating that by no means should you take that as guarantee, but only an early indication. What definitely isn't beyond reasoning is to suggest that DICE is, as of now already, working on Chapter 6 and some of the content to come sometime in January or February of 2020. Then in our only in Battlefield moments, we start this week off with Shadow 6, taking out infantry at extreme long range and aircraft in close quarters. Next up, we have the legend that is Drunksy, going to town on the enemy with the brand new katana. Just a meme bro with this takedown on an enemy pilot. And to end things off this week, we have Living On with an absolute beastly V1 on Iwo Jima. Coming to the end of this week's episode though, if you enjoyed the show, found it interesting or entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share, and of course hit me up with your feedback, suggestions, and opinions down below in the comments or over on Twitter. With all that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next episode this week on the battlefield.